Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Amy Thompson from Roots Resources. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Amy is an ABA business leader who is on today for consulting.
Yes.
So we're going, Amy is like a lot of you as you're building your business, you're also thinking about your exit strategy of, what if not that you're planning on bailing right now, but what do you want to do in the future? Like where what plan do you want to have in the future when you want to decrease hours or, you want to spend time doing something else and not being at work all the time.
Right. Not working 80 hours a week anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
So I know, Stephen, you have a lot to say about exit strategy in general.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm working with customers like you, Amy, it's exit strategy doesn't mean, okay, I want to sell my company and get out of here. It's like, how do I find the reason why I started my practice, right? The reason why that I'm doing this, and maybe get rid of some of the stressors and do more of why I'm doing this. And a lot of people make the decision, I want to be like the high level person, that does the expansions, or I want to do, just like kind of sit up here and just watch people do the day-to-day grind, right? I want to, I often will say, I want to be sitting on a beach drinking a margarita. Well, my staff, I know everything's being done right. I have all the values in place. We have all the processes in place, and I can trust that I can take a vacation without the whole place falling apart, right? Like, even that is the first step to the exit strategy. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And so is that can you kind of just, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, first, why don't you tell us a little bit, and I failed to ask you during the intro, but tell us a little bit about your company, how many years you've been in business, and just kind of like a general overview of like the size of your company and what services you offer, things like that.
Yeah. So we have been in business about a year now. We're in Alaska, and we span, we do telehealth statewide, but we also have clinics in the Matsu Valley and Anchorage. And we serve a couple people in Fairbanks area, and that's new. And so I would say we probably are about 12 people strong at this point, and probably like 35 clients or something like that. We're pretty small, and that's the way I like it too. And so I have kind of a unique background, and I had an ABA company for about 4 years, and I kind of turned around, and I didn't recognize my own company. I gave away too much power. I guess I was all about systems and key people and offloading tasks and having all these different positions, and I turned around and I just was like, where are we going? What I did that. I don't even feel comfortable like coming into my own office anymore. I'm not and it's not clinically it was not my vision. We weren't following, the values that we set out in the beginning, because there was, key people that were doing their own thing, and I was always like prided myself on giving people a lot of independence and creativity, and just wanting people to, come up with ideas and we could spearhead them together, things like that. But I just found that I let go too much. And so now I'm in a reverse situation where I'm like, I know I need to let go, but I'm also so terrified to let go again. And so Roots really came from going back to my roots and what I thought was important, and the way I thought the ABA should be done. And it's a very play-based model, and it's a very like naturalistic model, which is not seen here a lot because we're in Alaska, we're like 10 years behind everybody else. So um, so just kind of, we're kind of trying to rewrite, what people think about ABA here, trying to, give parents a different option, and just try to inform people that there's 1,000 ways that ABA can look, and it's not just this one, way that they've, known in Alaska, and just trying to change the reputation of ABA kind of in general here. It's a big task, but
yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. I commend you for that. That sounds like a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication on your part. So congratulations. How exciting.
So where do you, like, just looking back at the previous company, right, do you have like a sense of where it kind of went off the rails? Or do you just not quite know, like one day it was yours and the next day it was like, what is this thing?
Yeah, so I think it went off the rails. I was very overwhelmed. We grew very fast. I look back on that with regret. And so I think we grew very fast, and I needed to put people in place. And I didn't have, being not only a brand new business owner, but also, and it was a nonprofit, so not owner, but being brand new to managing a business, but being really young. I was like 25 or something. And I didn't know anything about anything. And so I needed to find these key people and, lean on people more so than having like my own really in-depth knowledge. I leaned on billing companies. I leaned on, things like that, and not informing myself of, how much I should be involved. So we hit a lot of roadblocks in things like that, billing and stuff like that. But I think too, there was a point where, we put people in place, and they were, supposed to kind of take off with this high level positions and kind of manage all of the clinical stuff for things like that. And I think that's where I started to feel more like shut out, or more like I lost control, because I was no longer in charge of the clinical. I was just in charge of the business side. And so, yeah, I felt like I lost touch with, being really known by employees, I was the kind of typical CEO that you would see in like a bigger company. They didn't know my face. They didn't know me. They did, and so that is part of it. The families didn't know me because I wasn't doing the intakes, and I wasn't, meeting them. And so I think that I took a maternity leave, and that was probably a big part of it. I needed to have support in place to do a maternity leave. And then I didn't feel, I felt like more shut out, I guess, when I was trying to come back from that and not recognizing faces, and not, really being, and also not really being like directly in charge, I guess, and just kind of being seen as like more of a figurehead. And so I felt like I lost respect, because like the things I was saying or trying to implement were not happening at all. And it was more like, oh, well, that's what she wants, but that's, not what she's not really here to just, to realize that we're not doing that or whatever. And that was part of too, just having, starting too fast and having 3 clinics and a wide base area where I couldn't be there. I think we had a clinic that's like 6 or 7 hours away. And so, I think it just became a beast that I couldn't manage anymore. And so then I really had to look at like, okay, how are we going to stop the rotation, like stop the wheel, because I couldn't fix the wheel. So it was too far gone. I felt like, unless I, really cleaned house and let everybody go and started again. At that point, I thought I better just start brand new.
April and I are so honored to have MarginKeepers sponsor this podcast.
Running an ABA business comes with its share of challenges. Managing clients, staff, insurance, the list goes on.
One thing you shouldn't add to your stress, bookkeeping. That's where MarginKeepers comes in.
They're specialists in ABA businesses, which means they understand exactly what we need.
With MarginKeepers handling your finances, you can focus on what really matters, your clients and your practice's growth.
They're more than just bookkeepers. They're lifesavers in the financial world of ABA.
So for peace of mind and expert financial management,
turn to MarginKeepers. It's a decision that will lift a weight off of your shoulders.
Check out MarginKeepers at www.marginkeepers.com and see how they can help your business thrive.
And so now looking back at this may help with, coming up with your dream job. And that's why I'm asking these questions. But now looking back at that situation and now you find yourself in maybe more, you as you mentioned, too much into everything versus not in it at all. Do you have a sense of where you would like to be? What does the day-to-day look like in your dream job? What would that look like? How would that feel? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think my dream job right now, I'm doing a lot of admin duties. That's not my favorite. And I think that we've had admin people, and I think it's really hard to let go of admin. It's easier, I think, to let go of clinical and hire a BCBA that matches your values. For me, it's hard to let go of admin because it's so important. If you don't get that authorization, you didn't notice you didn't have that authorization a month ago, or you didn't notice that the billing went out wrong and you got to go do this and that, or that it wasn't, approved, or, and we're a week late or something. So I think that admin is the quickest way to really kill your business. And so that's really hard. I would easily let go of things like scheduling, and love to let go of scheduling and calling people. But I would love to be involved enough to where I still feel like I would know what's going on regularly. And I think that was part of it, is I felt like if I hired a clinical director again, or a director at all, that there's a point where they are supposed to be absorbing the issues of the day-to-day things, but it wasn't being passed on to me, the issues of the day, and so a lot of things went unknown to me until I was getting a really angry call, or I'm having to call somebody and work something down. And whether it's a school district or a parent, a teacher, I wouldn't know until it was already a huge problem. So I'd want to be involved enough in admin and talking to people that I'm still gonna know what's going on. But I do absolutely loathe scheduling and and I, in general, making intake calls or things like that. I am not a good phone person. I dread making phone calls. I would rather do an email all day, or a text message. And so I've been trying to figure out when we get a referral, can we just send them a text message? I would much rather that. But unfortunately, they like to have a voice on the phone. So as far as all of that, we train, we generally are training our own clinicians. So I'm okay with letting go of clinical, and I will, we have somebody that's about to test, and then I will be letting go of most of my caseload. But still, I think that it takes years too on the clinical side to build, trust or confidence that parents can trust in, is you don't come off confident when you first pass your test, and parents don't trust their children with you until you really are coming off confident and that you have that kind of background. So even then, I feel like I will have to be very connected, clinically, as people are passing their tests. So, but I would love to be able to take a vacation, or, even 2 days or something. So, and I knew that I was getting myself into a problem area, when I realized that, I couldn't take a day off. That's when I was like, oh, I did that classic, first, beginning business mistake. that I didn't do last time, but this time I really did, and now to the point of like trying to hire admin, I'm so busy, it's like hard to hire somebody. And that's where I'm like, oh, I got myself in so much trouble that I am buried in work to the point where I'm trying to even find somebody good, and I can't, it's hard for me to make it these 20 interviews or things like that because it's hard for me to find holes in my schedule. So yeah, hopefully I'm not too far gone.
No, I mean, this is, I would say that many BCBA business owners have found themselves here, right? Like, they're very confident in their clinical, the side of things, right? And when they've hired a BCBA to kind of help them maybe, and their RBTs, they feel pretty confident that they're being trained correctly and the quality of care is pretty good. And then they take on a bunch of this admin stuff and they can't let go of it. And I think that we kind of found ourselves in a very similar situation. Like, I think the scheduling one for sure, like, it is a very difficult skill to train somebody on, right? Mm-hmm. It's like almost an art form, I find.
Right.
I
love doing scheduling. However, it had me so like attached to everything that I couldn't not answer a text or an email or a phone call because it might be about scheduling, and I was the only one that held the magic for that. Right.
Right. Yeah. So letting that go it certainly can be difficult. And like the what I have heard, and I have said it myself, is let's say I can find a person that I would feel comfortable hiring. I don't have enough time in the day to train this person on how to schedule, right? Like, this is going to take at least 3 months to train them on how to do these things. And that means that I have to do it and I have to train them. Like, there's no possible way that I can do both. So I'm just going to continue doing this.
And if you don't already have your processes written down, then it's like you got to get it from your head to the person. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the first thing that I would ask is, have you tried any of these automated scheduling systems? I think there's ABA Schedules is one of them. Have you tried any of those?
No, I haven't.
So I have heard pretty good things about them. So that may be something worthwhile trying out. I don't know the costs. We've had a conversation with them once, maybe 3 years ago. So like we are not partners, we're not affiliated with them at all, but I've heard pretty good things about them. And I've heard that it can save a lot of time. So while it may not remove the entire scheduling process from you, there may still be some like nuances. Like, I don't know how it would interact with telehealth, and I assume you're doing in-home as well. Is
it's mostly in clinic and school.
Okay, so I don't know how it would interact with telehealth /school right? Like, I don't know if it would understand the nuances between them and how they may stack and, like that stuff. But it may at least alleviate some of the pressure off of you to the point where it's at least doable, right? Like, it's at least like, okay, this no longer takes 15 hours a week. It only takes maybe 10 hours a week. Like, at least it cuts some. So like automating as much of this as you can humanly possibly do. And I know you mentioned like, okay, do I have to make a phone call to do these intakes? A lot of this stuff may be automatable, right? So like somebody fills out the new client application and it automatically sends them an email and says, hey, here's the next step, we'll be reaching out to you soon, but here's the next step. Like, so things like that can certainly help, and so if I'm sitting down, we're kind of listing off, similar to what you already said, we would just list out all the things that you hate and see if there's anything that we can automate out would be, the first step. So yeah, so I would highly recommend demoing ABA schedules, just to see if it helps. I know there are some other platforms that do scheduling too. I believe Central Reach does scheduling. And again, you may even want to do a Facebook post and just say, hey, has anybody tried any of these scheduling apps? Does it work? But I have really heard some good things about ABA schedules. So that may be helpful. And then you may have the opportunity to, like, again, if there are some areas where it just doesn't quite meet what you need, then maybe an admin person can do that final piece with your approval, right? Does that make sense? So that would be the area that I would go with that. And like I said, if there are any ways that you can automate the intake process, that could certainly help. And then I like the other thing that I heard you mention was like, you want to be in it enough so that you can head off any of the issues before they become major issues. And so,
can I interrupt
go
you?
ahead.
To go back to intake calls.
Yeah.
So for me, I really like doing intakes, and I liked making those phone calls or receiving them. But I found that when I did like a time audit, that I was spending way too much time talking to the people. And also once I got their life story, then I felt so obligated and like responsible for sometimes I felt like more so than the guardian I talked to about making sure that this kid got in on our schedule and got what they needed. So as hard as it was, that was one of the first things that I trained our admin on. And she was in clinic. She was in person admin. She had multiple jobs. But that was one of hers is she sat in on several of my like initial intake phone calls just to kind of get a sense of it. And she would take notes, and she was really good at synthesizing information and summarizing. So she was able to kind of come up with the questions that she heard me ask or general questions. So then together we formulated like a script type thing with specific questions. Now she had the ability, like she didn't sound like she was having a script with the parents. And of course, as she got more practice, she got better at it. Sure. And she was able to answer a lot of questions. But having her do that first layer of intake and like, so we would like have an intake form they would fill out. And then we would send them an email, like a form email. And then like Gabby would call or, admin would call. Or sometimes she would just answer the phone and it was, are you taking new clients? And then it was just a cold conversation right off the cuff, right? So anyway, so she got really good. So that gave my prospective clients a person to talk to and a personable person to talk to. Those are some of the soft skills that you have to look at when you're hiring someone for this role, right? Maybe even some of your BCBAs who are training. Now, I know that they wouldn't be able to like really just take cold calls because they're probably going to be with clients and their schedule's limited. But even if there were some callbacks that need to happen, maybe that's something that they can do to practice. Right. So just wanted to say that about intakes. And then we did like what we had from that is what information that she learned from that call. There was specific information we had on a at the time it was just a binder that she filled out because we were all in office, but eventually it turned into like a virtual form, like a electronic form. But then there was specific information that she would gather from that call and put into the spreadsheet that we would all share and all had access to. And then then she would go ahead and follow up with scheduling like the call or scheduling them to come in to get all their insurance information, check and do pre-authorization if needed. So then from there was a very specific process. So then if there were people who never responded or never sent in their insurance information or they never followed up on confirming the assessment date or then that was noted in the log and we moved on. And that was looking back at that was a hard thing to let go of. But I still had all the information at my fingertips as needed. And I didn't have to with this staff because they were so good about keeping up with that stuff. But if, at the beginning, it would just be following up, making sure that they're keeping up with this information and you have a specific protocol that you're following and all the pieces can just fall into place. And that could be a way of automating it without an external service or without AI or without, you can still have that very personable piece. And then we also had flags where it would be an immediate phone call to me if there was a very specific situation that came up that the normal answers or her level of information or understanding couldn't go. Like, let's say, like, maybe there was some pretty dangerous behaviors or some very specific questions about a very specific thing, then she would schedule a phone call for me and this mom or parent, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you. Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to share that information because I know a lot of us as business owners don't want to lose that personal piece that we somewhat love, but at the same time we don't. It
can also be draining.
Because it is very draining, and it's putting a lot of time into. I mean, and this is where the business part kicks in too, right? Like, you're in the business of helping people, yet you have to keep things moving or you're going to lose money too. So it's a sticky situation. Yeah.
And for like the admin person, what I would recommend, and this is, this has been my recommendation to my, my consults, but also for myself, is hire someone, right? And so, like, I wouldn't worry about education level. That didn't matter to me. I don't care. It was more about, are they willing to learn, and do they ask questions? That was the biggest thing for me. And then what I would do is for the first 3 months, they were my shadow. So they just follow me around, and they were just writing down what I did. And like I would say, I may even say the things that I'm doing out loud. So, okay, first we're going to do this, okay, and then I click on this page and I go here, right? If I'm doing something on a website or, if I'm doing the scheduling, like I would say it out loud and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about when I'm doing this. Well, Jenny has ballet at this time, so we can't have her here, but we can put her on Thursdays. She can be at this time, right? And so I'm just thinking about all the thoughts that are going on in my head, I'm saying out loud, so this person can understand the complexity and just get an idea of how I'm thinking and how I do this. And I found that both, number one, helpful for me, because then I knew what I was doing, and they found it very helpful because they could see, wow, this is a lot, and they may even come at it from a different way. Well, have you ever thought about this? And so it can be very helpful, and it gives them an opportunity to learn without you having to train them, right? Because that was the biggest piece, and the biggest feedback that I get is I don't have enough time to train this person, and this job is untrainable, right? I can't write this down in a task analysis. There is no way that this can be done. There's just way too many variables. And so that I have found has been very helpful to a lot of people. Is the first 3 months, you don't have the expectation to train them, and they don't have the expectation of having to do the job.
And then you also see if you have the self-starter that you want, because then they're going to come to you and they're say, okay, I've got this process. Do you mind if I start doing this? And then getting the feedback.
So that would be my recommendation, is if you have someone that you think would fill that position, just go ahead and do it. And the other thing I will say is, even if you're wrong, now you know what you don't want, right? And we've had many marketing people that we've hired over the years, and many virtual assistants that we've hired over the years. And even the bad ones, I would say, they may be the most helpful, because then you're able to say, yeah, no, that's not what I want, right? Like that combination of personality and habits, I don't want that anymore. So I can avoid that the next time. That may be very helpful. And they may be a perfect employee somewhere else, but the two personalities don't mesh, and that's okay, right? But now we know, and so we can move forward. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm wondering if I could even open it up to RBTs to do scheduling phone calls and stuff like that. So once.
Yep. And a lot of people will have that as an RBT hybrid position, where they may have a really good RBT that is super burnt out, and they're like, okay, I don't want to lose this person, and I think that they have the ability to do some of these other tasks, and I would trust them because I already know them. and then you can kind of give them some of those tasks. The issue may come when what I have seen is, okay, this is no longer a part-time admin spot. This is pretty much full-time. So am I going to take this awesome, amazing RBT and make them an admin person? Or am I going to take the admin tasks away from this RBT and they're going to quit anyway? Right? So that's the scenario that you may find yourself in, that the feedback I've gotten from other companies that have tried the hybrid position kind of find themselves in. So that's just something to think about before
Plus, you could have a couple of hybrid positions.
You could.
Then you have the hybrid position, and then you hire a part-time admin that hybrid tech then hires, and then that person eventually becomes full-time. I mean, there's lots of ways of doing it.
It just can get very time-consuming if you've got a couple of hybrids and who's doing what. Yeah. And I thought you were going to do that. No, I thought you were doing that.
That's
right?
where you have to have that clear expectation, and everybody knows what's expected of them. For sure. Yeah.
And just getting back to the one thing that you mentioned about like wanting to be involved at enough so that things don't get out of control. And I think, one of the things that you talked about when you started this process with us was KPI. And so I think that KPI on that side would be a great opportunity. So like, you can see, okay, how many customer complaints did we get this week, right? And so like at this meeting, we're talking about key performance indicators. And so these people that you put in those situations, how many cancellations did we have this week? How many sick call-outs did we have this week? How many complaints did we have this week? Anything that you would want to see ahead of time, like before it gets too big that it's a problem, you could put those into KPI so that you could see them ahead of time or in real time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wonder too, like even in the short term, or since you're still small and you're growing, but you're being very cautious and you're still wanting to have that like face-to-face time with the people on your staff. I'm trying to remember what the letters stand for, but the triple C, like the clarity check-in sheets.
Yes.
Because you've mentioned your values, and it sounds like you're really in tune with your values. And yes, 100% you can incorporate your values into your KPI and all of that. And I think that's an excellent idea. And I definitely want to, like in our next session, really dive into those KPIs.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering even if just like some like 5-10 minute check-ins with your staff, and like with those like keeping your values as part, we can share with you what we're talking about. I don't have it ready to pull up right away, but you like just check in like 2 or 3 points, and you're like checking in through like the lens of your values, and it gives them an opportunity, like you're asking them, how can I help support you do your job? Like also, right, you're getting like you're just like lays that groundwork for that true open door, so that you can have that relationship and that flexibility and that connectedness with your staff that it sounds like you want, without being like, sure, do what you need to do. I support you on that, but you can be part of that, because that was the thing that was a big learning curve for myself. It was like I realized at one point I had let go like a little too much, and then I was like, wow, things are kind of getting a little out of control. But then people kind of felt, well, why are you asking me these questions now? You let me do it the way I wanted to for a while. So these like, and even if you have an ongoing project or a very specific job expectation, or something that this particular staff member's working on, it's not like a full 6-month eval by any means. It's like something little. It's like the top priority. And then you're just really checking in with them, and it keeps that communication open. And yes, it's to check in on a project or a goal or something, but it's also to stay grounded to the values and offering them a chance to give you feedback as well. It can be time consuming. A lot of people are like, oh, that's too much. I'm not. But if you put it on, like a frequency, if you put it in your calendar and you get it going and you do like really stick to a 5 or 10 minute quick, and the more you do them, the more you can do them quick, because you're not going to have a lot of backstory to go into. You're just getting a quick update. You good? How can I support you? Or, hey, we really could use more pencils. Okay, great. Let's work on how we can make that happen, you know, and then asking them. And then you can even put some of that back on them to take responsibility for. You're still checking in. You're still keeping some some main point notes so that you can stay ahead of things. And it's giving that face time. And I found that staff really responded well to that. So
giving them the ownership of the to-dos that come out of that is really important, because if you get 25 more to-dos because you did this extra work, like, it's like, why did I do this thing, right? And it can get very overwhelming. So definitely giving them the ownership of the to-dos, if you can possibly.
In the very beginning, when I started this, it was really a lot of tech's opportunity to come to me and ask me for more toys. And so I quickly was like, okay, send me an email. And then, like, even from that, then I'm like, have these emails to sort through. And then I'm like, and then they send me these emails with these really long, like, Amazon. I was like, whoa, this is too much. So, but from that, we came up with a process of how to request toys and how much money we're going to put towards that each month and how we're going to determine. And then once that was set, then I could pass that on to someone.
Somebody else can do it.
Yeah. But I didn't know that so many techs were angry and frustrated that they didn't have enough puzzles that didn't have all the pieces. Right. I was like, I can get you puzzles. And those things wouldn't have happened, I don't think, in the same way they would have turned into big deals.
Right. Yeah. So. And the other thing that you can add to those, like, if we're continuing on with these coaching conversations, it's like, how did you apply the values of the company this week? And when did you feel like you went outside of those values? Because these, again, like, if you... going back to that situation that you found yourself in prior to with your old companies, like, when did you lose that spot, right? When did the values change? When did it somehow no longer was it mine? And so if you can check in with your staff to see things that you may not even think are going outside of the way that you would want them to do, and they're like, well, I have no other option. I have to do it this way or I can't do it. That may be very eye-opening, and then maybe you can bring it back in and say, well, no, hold on, we can do it this way, right? We can still align with our values, and we can do it a little differently, and that may be very helpful to you as well, as you move through this process. And like, does that make sense? Yeah. And then, like, so we talked about a lot of the things that you don't want to do, but then the next part of this would be, like, what are the things that you love to do, right? What are the things that you love about your company and that you would want to continue doing for the next, 10 years, maybe? Like, that would be my next question.
2 years.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, 2 years.
I think that, honestly, I've always preferred, like, more of the spreadsheet money side of things, I guess, and more on the business side of things. I've always preferred that, and kind of figuring out where we're going to go next. And I'm big about innovating. I'm a creative brain kind of person. I'm not the person that is stuck in one way. I'm the person that has like 20 ways and I have to lower it down, So I'm all about making things better, faster. What's the best way that we can set this up? And I think that too was a part of changing to a new company. Was like, okay, well, I've now honed in kind of what the best ways we can do things are. And now I want to really, like, implement that. And so I think too, I like to, I don't know, that's a love-hate with outreach and talking to other companies. something that, like, from the nonprofit side of me, I was on different boards and stuff like that. And so I think it's important for me to keep doing that and trying to educate people about ABA here, because I think it's so needed. But it's not, talking to people is not my my number one thing I like to do. But I'll go to sit at the booths at the conferences, and I'll go, to outside conferences too. But a lot of times that's like me going to the school district conferences, or me talking to the principals, or trying to make sure that everybody knows that we're a resource. And so I like doing the marketing side of things as well. So I send mailers, and things like that. I don't know. It's just I love Canva and, and coming up with what we're gonna send next. Are we gonna send a box with all of our marketing materials in it? Are we gonna send out Christmas cards or stuff like that? So I like to do the marketing outreach stuff. Even though I'm not a big people person, but I think that I like to also do, and again, I don't know that I like, or I just want to hold on to, but I would like to be more of the intake specialist, which is a weird thing. And I think that's because I want to know what kids are coming in with, what needs. And then also I want to know, for if we're expanding clinicians, are what they're writing for that kiddo, or what they're setting up for that kiddo, is that what matches what I think should be. I think that's hard to know if you've never met them, or you never met the parent, or things like that. So I think that's one thing that I could keep, that would keep kind of my pulse, kind of keep my finger on the pulse, without having to be their direct clinician. I know it would be hard in that transfer, to do a transfer where, like, I've done the intake, but then somebody else takes over. But I know that big companies do that all the time. So they've figured that out, So I think like an intake specialist / more what you would see of a traditional CEO, where you're meeting the people, you're going to the Chamber of Commerce and you're doing the talks and things like that. Those are kind of the things I want to keep.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that really fits with what sounds like, we won't go into it today, but I'm very curious to know what your values are, because I can definitely see like things are like already kind of coming together and categorizing, and it seems like, connection, is a really big, huge thing for you. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Being part of the intake specialist, even though earlier you're like, oh, I don't want to have to make the phone calls. I totally get it. Yeah. And, because there is that point where, because I know with our company, there was that point of growth where I was like, almost panic of like, I'm like reading this treatment plan from one of my BCPAs, and I mean, it sounds fine, but how do I know? How do I really know? And so I made it a goal. I put all of our clients, when we kind of like scaled back down, we were smaller again. I put all of our clients on like I can't remember now, but like at least if I saw one client, saw a client like once every 3 months or something. So at least I could go into the home. I could have a meeting with the parents, because we were mostly in home, and, be able to at least, because once you get to a certain level, not saying that you're going to know everything there is to know about a child and the situation in like a 30-minute visit, but you'll have a good idea. You really will. And then you'll be able to know what red flags to ask about if you're, reading over a treatment plan, or you're in a meeting and you're talking about a certain behavior at school or whatever. Then you'll have a better idea. You'll have something to pull from. And I like that you can definitely group that with the intake, because even if, let's say, worst case scenario, I don't know if worst case scenario is the right words, but even let's say at minimum you only met this kid and this family intake, at least you have put your eyes on them and you have a sense of the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's and I think that this is, I don't know how helpful this was for you or how eye-opening. It may not have been. I already knew this.
You guys are
this is nothing new. But like what my homework for you would be is just to okay, I'm doing this thing. I hate doing this thing. And then writing it down on the hate list, right? And then, oh, wow, I really, like, I've been doing this for 2 hours. I thought it was 15 minutes. I love doing this thing, right? Like, and just figuring out, getting that list of, okay, these are the things that I really enjoy. And these are the things that I hate. And then that'll at least give you some ideas on what are the first things that we need to get off of my list, and what areas do I think an admin will help me in?
Well, not even, I wanted to say, like, not everything's going to be as black and white as love and hate. No. And so another thing, because, you're like, well, I'm okay with making these phone calls. I might procrastinate and put it off for the end of the week, and then, make this phone call and be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I actually kind of enjoyed that. Right. But even like taking a audit, like a time audit, and taking like 2 or 3 weeks, some people, I say this and they're like, oh, and I'm like, okay, 2 days. But other people, maybe even like a month, like even if you're just coordinating your calendar, or you make a spreadsheet and you just like generally, categorize the different tasks that you're doing and how much time is it taking. I really love, maybe you're like, I actually really do love connecting with people and having these conversations once I'm out there doing it. But honestly, the issue is it's just too time consuming, and it's taking away other things. So maybe I'll make, 20% of those calls in a month, and then I'll have someone help me. It doesn't, and that's a big thing that at least a lot of the newer, I wouldn't, even though you're a year into this particular biz, I wouldn't consider you a new business owner because you've come with a wealth of knowledge of your first experience. But I think that's a trap that people get into, is like that black and white. It doesn't have to be. Like, you could do part of the outreach and you could play on Canva and have like do all your creative fun stuff. Or maybe you only do that for a certain amount per month, and then you let someone else take the rest of it once you've kind of helping them, like, this is my brand, this is the type of things. But then you still may want that to be part of your week, because it really, if you take too much of that out, then you're going to be sad that you're not getting to play on Canva. So, it really is a balance, and there's no formula that anyone can give or that you can even make for yourself, because it is going to change. But like looking at your values and like looking at not love and hate too, but also like what's taking your time, and, looking at that realistically of how to balance those. Yeah.
And so whether you can do the time, because again, like, I know I've been here and it's like, I hate logging, I hate journaling, and I know it's helpful, but I still won't do it. So it is what it is, right?
Well, that's where that person who's following you for 3 months can write that stuff down for you.
Exactly.
Maybe not your internal, maybe your internal thoughts, because you're expressing them out loud.
You're expressing them out loud, yeah. And so if that would be where I would start, like, April, that is a great thing to do if you're willing to do it. If you're not willing to do it, even just putting down that list of things that I don't want to do if I can absolutely help it, so that we know, okay, where can an admin help, or where can I automate some of this stuff, and then, kind of focus more on what I love. And so then you're less stressed, you have less work. And now we can bring on some of these things like you had talked about, having those continuing conversations with your staff so that you can still get what you need, but not be so involved in the day-to-day grind that it's just so much I can't handle it anymore.
Then it's the opposite of not being involved as much anymore.
Correct.
And then, like, as far as you're talking about automating stuff, looking kind of like transitioning, looking for our next session together. So, that's a big piece of KPI, right? Is like automating things. And so, as you already have a good sense of where you stand with a lot of your KPI, and know that you have more specific questions and things that you want to run by us and talk about next time. But even looking at some of these systems that could be automated that kind of already kind of go into the KPI that you have going and that you're starting to take data on and stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Cool. All right.
Do you have any questions for us as we finish up?
I don't think so. That's about it.
Great. I know it's a lot of information. But feel free to reach out to us. If, you're kind of digesting this and you're having questions, just shoot us an email. And then we'll also be in contact with you to schedule our next time together.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.